Okay, welcome Jana Becher to Wake Up Wake Up. Jana, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in maybe a couple years.
Yeah, I think it's been 2 years and it's really nice to connect with you again.
It's so nice to connect with you. And I know that I hear from my family members that they're all working with you, and they have nothing but wonderful things to say about you all the time. They're just so happy that they found you in their lives. Um, Jana, I know you do energy work, and would you call it shadow work? Is that what?
Well, yes, if you consider anything that makes the unconscious conscious shadow work, then that's actually a really good term. So it's like energy healing, emotional healing, anything to expand our awareness ourselves. But yeah, that's
I love that. Anything that makes the unconscious conscious, because that's really, it's kind of like you're going in your body and you're looking for whatever is hidden, almost like,
right.
you know, like a little Christopher Columbus on the inside.
That's a really good comparison. And yes, we are looking in our body because our body tells us exactly what's going on. It's a messenger for us.
Would you be able to, could you walk us through, for maybe someone has never done any energy work before, um, what it entails, and maybe this is the first time they've ever heard about this, uh, you know, bringing your unconscious conscious. How would you in your words describe it to them?
Well, that's two different things in a way. So energy work is the way I define it. Um, Basically, our entire reality is when you break it down to its core, it's energy. Like if you look at an atom, it consists of particles and they are actually really just a lot of empty space and then an electron and a proton. And if you look even deeper, it's just frequency, it's quantum waves. So everything is just energy of different density. So some energy is so dense that we perceive it as matter, and other energy is less dense and we perceive it as thoughts and emotions. And with our focus and our intention, we can affect reality on that level. So anything we do consciously using our focus and our intention is basically energy work. So everything is energy work, and where you don't, yeah, act with the physical directly. So that's the one thing. And shadow work, so making the unconscious conscious, there's a lot of tools for that. And as you already pointed out, it's really a great tool to listen to our bodies when it comes to that. Our body is talking to us all the time and trying to tell us where there's some unresolved stress in our system. So when we experience something stressful and we don't have the capacity to fully process that, it gets stored in our system. So our body is basically holding that, holding space for that. It's like a part of our consciousness is encapsulating that pain so that we can move on from that situation, but the stress is still in our system. And whenever we have the capacity to actually process that, our body tells us, there's still something, look. So the way we can find out if there's something is to listen to the tension in our body, listen to the ailments. They all have a message. We can talk to each organ in our system. Hey, liver, what's up? Is there something you want to tell me? But if we have a symptom, that's always some unresolved stress being expressed physically. So listening to the body is one way, and the other way is listening to the emotions, because before ailments manifest physically, it's unresolved emotional stress. And only if that lingers in our system long enough, it becomes physical. If we don't listen to it on an emotional level for a while, it becomes physical. So being connected with our emotions is the most direct way to do shadow work, to find out if any situation in the external gives, let's call it exaggerated response, emotional response, if it triggers us. That's the word that people usually use. So if it's just the response in our system is stronger than the external situation would actually, provide.
So I think that's beautiful. It's very beautifully put. And what would be a tool that you could tell someone, if they wanted to kind of practice on themselves before they're ready to take the next step and work with someone like yourself? How can they become aware of things that they aren't even aware of going on inside their body? Because I find that a lot of people it's not even a thing for them to check in with themselves. They're not even
so bad, isn't it?
I know.
That's really what we gotta learn, to check in with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Jana, hey Heidi, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
So if we realize there is a trigger, we have an emotional response that's rather intense. So let's say we have a conversation at work that really triggers us, and we feel like, oh man, I'm really angry. And we realize this response is stronger than it would actually be normal. Then I like to set a bookmark, because usually in that situation we don't have the space to go inward. So I'm telling myself, then I'm hearing you, I'm feeling you, I'm coming back to you. So it's really like a bookmark. And then in the evening when I have time, I check in with myself, and then I connect with that feeling. And by connecting with that feeling and allowing it to be perceived, to be felt, we are already connecting with that wounded part within ourselves that's holding that emotion since it was first born. So that's really, what inner child work is about. So we have an aspect of ourselves that feels wounded, that is carrying this old stress and wound. And by allowing the emotion, we are connecting with that aspect. And then once we do that, once we allow that emotion to be there, to give it our presence, it's already starting to be processed in our system, because until then it has been fully suppressed. We've been completely dissociated from it. But when we give it our attention and our focus, our awareness, our presence, then it can start to flow again. The energy can start to flow in our system. And maybe we want to cry. Maybe we want to scream if we're angry. So we just give the emotion space. And what we then can do is to really directly connect with that aspect that carried that wound all the time, and show it our unconditional presence like we would with a child, and ask what it needs from us. And very often we are giving then images. Like this could be a memory, a childhood memory, or it could just be a symbolic image. And then we can work with that in a very creative and playful way, and meet our needs, the needs of that aspect, so that it can fully process that stuck emotion and then move on in a more whole and more complete way.
That is beautiful. And I'm imagining when you go and you sit with that emotion, and do you sometimes, I know you would take me through, well, where are you in my body? And then all of a sudden, like, my heart would start pounding, or even my arm or my head. But will you focus on what is the reaction happening from that feeling? Just almost like observing it as if, you're writing it down, or, just really observing all of it.
Well, I wouldn't write it down.
Not literally writing down, but you're observing it, trying to take notes of everything.
You follow the emotion, because usually when you sink into the emotion, maybe it's first that you feel it in your heart space. And then when you are there with your presence and with that feeling in your heart space, sometimes it's moving. It's moving to the belly or into the arms, and you just follow it with your presence.
Mm-hmm. And then
so it's basically being present with whatever happens.
Right. And would you say that a journal would be helpful to journal it?
For people to connect generally with their emotions, yes. In the process, I wouldn't do it, because it's good to have your entire presence with your emotions. So I actually even close my eyes when I do it. Okay. Or I recommend people to close their eyes, so they're fully present with whatever's going on inside of them. But in general, that's a really good idea to connect with your inside work.
And do you ever just start at the top and just kind of scan yourself all the way down? Or do you just kind of maybe you had something like you're talking about, maybe at work, and something happened, and then you remember, you bookmarked it at the end of the day to go back to it. So maybe that's where you start, and then it might kind of from there sail around.
I'm aware of these techniques, but usually for me, it's like, boom, it's there.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just like, when I set the intention to resolve something and I feel into a situation, it's already present, and then I feel where it is. So I'm very sensitive, I'm very empathetic when I work with myself, and even when I work with people, I feel right away where it is, what it is. So I'm just perceiving all of that, just like.
And I like, one of my favorite parts of working with you is at the very end, and you do a blessing, and I can just feel, it's almost like my body, the heat going over my body, just of a love feeling kind of setting over. And can you kind of explain what you do at the end of your sessions?
Well, I wouldn't call it a blessing, but my entire intention of the work that I'm doing with people is to reconnect them with who they truly are. And those stuck emotions, we are dissociated when this trauma, when this resolved stress is activated in our system. So we are disconnected not only from those aspects inside of us, we are also disconnected with our essence, with our higher self, if you will. So what I'm doing at the end of the session is really just to help my clients to reconnect with their higher selves.
Okay.
It's really just like reconnecting them with their divine self, reconnecting them with Gaia. And then when you are in that connection, when you feel that connection, then people who are sensitive feel that strong flow of energy that's suddenly back in their system. And that's not just the energy of Source and Gaia that's flowing through them, it's also that aspects of themselves have come back, have been reintegrated. So our energy level in general is just increasing in those moments.
Oh, that's true. So I heard someone once say it was almost like if you had a ball and there were some holes. Sorry, the sun is coming up for me. I'm gonna move over a little bit. They had, like, if you had a ball and it had little bitty dots in it, and the light was coming out. And with energy work, you're kind of going in and you're filling in those little spots so that you can keep your light inside of you, or your connection. Would you say that would be? There it goes. Sorry, the sun just went over that fence. So, well, it was, they were almost just explaining that to me, that sometimes you have holes of maybe sorrow or something that happened to you, and it's almost like part of your spirit or your connection to consciousness has escaped, and so when you go in and you do kind of energy work on yourself, you're bringing it back for you.
Well, any kind of healing, the root of the word healing is wholeness. So when we heal ourselves, we become more whole. So if you consider these holes like leaks in your system, energetic leaks in your system, mm-hmm. and any of those unresolved stress pains are that, because we are dissociated, we are not connected with who we are, a part of our energy is split off. So when we heal, no matter whether we are using like emotional processing or real energy work, we are reintegrating those aspects, and then our energy is not leaking anymore. So we become more whole and more integrated in our essence.
When do you think that a lot of this trauma begins to happen for us here that we experience?
Well, in our childhood, we are the most sensitive because we are set to learn. We take in everything like a sponge. So we are really, like gigantic sponges as children. And on top of that, we don't have the mental capacity yet to process mentally what's happening with us. And we didn't learn yet how to self-regulate our emotions. So we are very sensitive in that regard. And we are also fully dependent on our environment. So basically a lot of the stuff that is happening around us, which seems very average for adults, is a matter of survival for children. That's why they feel everything so intensely. And when there's something intense like that happening and we don't have the support or the resources to fully process that, then we are particularly sensitive to not being able to process all that. So early childhood until age 7, 8 is what they say is a very typical age that is given for that. But actually, it starts way before that. We can have trauma already from our womb stages, basically when our moms are pregnant with us, because we feel already what's going on. When our mom is stressed during pregnancy, we feel that. The same goes for conception, and it goes even further. When our grandmothers are pregnant with our mothers, the egg that we come from is already present in our grandmother's womb inside of the egg that's there. So any emotions that she's going through may affect us. And it goes even further. We know from scientific research, like modern science is actually catching up, that unresolved stress can cause epigenetic changes in our DNA, which means the pattern of the genes that are switched on and off alters when we are under stress and when we don't resolve that stress. And these epigenetic changes can also be passed on, which means we can actually already be born with PTSD, or at least with a very strong predisposition to specific kinds of trauma. And I noticed that particularly people who experience a lot of stress, a lot of trauma, there's very often a strong predisposition for that already. So if you really go back in that line, you can't even tell when it started.
Do you think that when you work with someone to shift that do you think that they're healing the line before them
Absolutely.
and after them?
Absolutely. DNA is communicating. That's also known already. So when we heal ourselves, we go back to this natural balanced state of the epigenetics. So the genes are switching on and off in a pattern that equals balance and harmony. And that's communicating with the DNA of our ancestors, of our offspring. So when we heal ourselves, we are always healing the entire ancestry line. And that's why I'm so proud of all of my clients, so happy about anyone who's daring to face their emotions, because this is really how we heal the world.
I find it interesting when I do work on an energy or an emotion. I almost find that once I've kind of processed that, I don't find that around my family as much anymore. But sometimes I'll think I've got it, and then I just peeled the onion, and I had to. It's a little bit deeper, and so. But I find that so interesting that the family kind of starts to evolve.
Yes, and I see that with myself, and I hear that from my clients a lot, that we work on ourselves and suddenly it's not just our family members. That's the most direct way, of course, because of that genetic relationship. But it's also the people around us in general. They are shifting, they are changing, because we are in a different state of consciousness. We are more whole. And if we think of reality in a way that everything outside of us is a reflection of our inner world, and we heal ourselves, we upgrade our level of consciousness because we are more integrated, then suddenly everything around us changes. And it's incredible what things like magical changes can happen, really.
It really is magical, because it's almost, the people I hang out with now are almost, there's a few people that will always be in my life, but it's almost like the whole thing around me has completely switched. All the people and the things I'm doing, and then it just keeps manifesting on a almost like 3.0, 4.0, 5.0. You just keep upgrading the software.
That's such a nice comparison. I like that as well. It's really like up leveling, up leveling, up leveling, and your entire reality comes with you.
Right. And sometimes, I'm sad because I'll see friends that, I do believe that everything you're seeing, you are everyone. And if it's happening around you, it's because it's happening inside of you. But then I'll have some friends who are kind of working on some issues, but I feel like I can't tell them that they need to work on an issue until they're ready to work on it. And so I almost just hold the space for them that maybe one day they'll be ready to do it. But then I have to space myself from them.
And then, that's very healthy to do. And sometimes taking care of our own stuff and evolving ourselves, focusing on our own personal expansion is the best we can do for the people we seemingly leave behind, because we are creating the pathway for them to follow us. We are showing them how to do it, and we are like up leveling the energetic field in general. It's like with the 100th monkey, that experiment, like we are just creating a pull of that new level if we move there, and then they can use their own free will to eventually take that step as well.
And that's a really good way of looking at it, because I've had some friends who they're like, well, I did all this work and then I went back and I felt guilty that I didn't hang out with even if it's a family member or a friend, and then they would go back, and because they felt guilty for not hanging out with those people after they'd done their own self-work, they kind of shifted backwards. So if the way that you just explained it, that you're kind of creating the pathway for them to do their inner finding, it's a different way to help people kind of let go.
Exactly. And if someone chooses to stay where they're at, it's like let's imagine they are like in a hole with dirt, and instead of us moving out of that hole and showing them how to do it, it would be like jumping back in there. If we were to, like, the guilt is already pulling us back in, and that doesn't make sense at all. It's like in an airplane when they tell you put on your oxygen mask first and then help others. That's it. Take care of yourself first. Make sure you are fine, and then you have the energy to help others. And actually, then your energy is so high that you're creating a pull for them to follow you. You're giving them permission to feel better as well, and you're showing them how to.
A new way, because it's just unfamiliar. When I talk to people about energy work, they're almost relieved that there is something that they can do, because they almost feel like I need to move. They feel like they are aware that maybe someone who's dealing with anger, and they get angry all the time, and then when they're not angry, they're sad because they know that people don't want to hang out with them because of their anger, but maybe they don't know how to process it. And so when I kind of explain what energy work is, they're like, oh, like it's almost like you can see like okay, well, how do I proceed? But now that they thought that there was no hope, now there's hope again. But
yeah, people just need to be educated about how to deal with their own emotions.
Right. Awareness. And is there something that people that you could give tools that people could work with children that help them, since they're so in that age range, when they're young, that because they're not able to complete the trauma cycle. Is there tools that you could give us that they can maybe use? Or
well, the most important thing is that we don't judge how they feel. We don't reject them when they're angry. We don't reject them when they are, I don't know, throwing a tantrum.
Right.
Because that's when they start to reject themselves. That's when they learn that anger is not okay, that my emotions are not okay. So holding space for them to feel their emotions, explaining them that there's always a reason why they feel the way they feel, and just being present with them is the best we can do. And if there are intense emotions, our body has actually ways of processing that naturally. The very easiest thing is just crying. That's how we complete a trauma cycle, crying. So holding space for our children to cry is helping them heal. And another thing that mammals do when they're stressed, so if you look at the lion or like any mammals, when they are stressed and the stress is done, what they do, they shake it off. So they really shake really strongly, and that's releasing the stress, and that's also completing a trauma cycle. we humans actually do that as well, but we suppress it a lot. So sometimes when we heal or when something intense comes up, we start shaking a little bit. And we can encourage that process by just shaking ourselves, by really just jumping around when we feel the stress, when we feel anger, let's say. We can put on some music and just jump and shake it off. And you can do that with children in a really playful way. So that's
I love that
as well. Another nice way just to process emotions that comes to my mind right now is art, drawing. Allow them to process it in a drawing, in a painting, because there we feel the emotions while we are drawing. We are connected with it on an emotional level. And it's also a somatic process. We are using our hand to create the art. So our body is involved, our emotions are involved. That's a really good way to do that as well. And the last thing that comes to my mind right now is look at the parents. Because very often the children are mirroring their parents' stress. So if a child suddenly changes in their behavior, look at what's going on in the parents' life, what stress they have right now, and just look for help for them, how they can deal with their own stress so that the children don't feel it, because they are very empathetic. They feel what's going on. They might not be able to name it, but they sense it. Very
much so. I love that. And all of those things that you say for children, I'm like, I'm going to do all those things as an adult.
Yes, I love that. I love that as well. Like particularly anger, for example, I love to tell my clients, and I love to do it myself, to process it in the drawing. You can just scribble it out, release the anger on a sheet of paper, and then you start working on that scribble until it looks beautiful. And that's such a healing process, because you release the emotion and then you process it in that painting, and you actually create something beautiful out of that anger. And that gives such a nice shift in consciousness, to see that, oh my gosh, that anger that I used to reject so much, it's actually the foundation for something that beautiful. So there's a lot you can do, actually.
There's so many things. What would you do for if someone is dealing with, right now, I feel like a lot of people are dealing with fear and sadness. What would be something that you would do for that emotion?
Well, fear is always a symptom of something deeper. So the question is, what are we afraid of? And right now, obviously, many people feel powerless to the situation outside of them. So it's actually a feeling of powerlessness we are dealing with. Same goes with anger. Anger is a cover emotion that very often below anger, there is helplessness and powerlessness or frustration. So basically, it comes down to what makes us feel safe again. Where am I actually in control of my life? So that we become aware that we are not fully out of control of our lives, but that we are actually in charge of certain things, that we actually do have power over our lives. And if it's something really deep, there's some deep fear, which means there's a deep wound, then address that in the way I explained in the beginning, or just ask someone for help. Because sometimes these wounds are so deep, and when we try to resolve them ourselves, we are actually re-traumatizing ourselves. Let's say if there's a wound that's related to being abandoned or to being alone when we are in pain, and we try to deal with that on our own, we are basically giving ourselves the message, nothing ever changed, I'm still alone in pain. Mm. So it can actually be really hard to address something like that alone. And then you can either ask a friend to hold space for you while you are going through the emotions, or you just ask someone. Because there are modalities that allow us to process these emotions, where you don't need to fully go through the painful experience again. There are modalities that are very gentle and very easy, but then you would have someone to guide you through it. Then you really need someone who's educated in that. That's why I like to combine in my work, educating people around what they can do for themselves, and for the tough stuff, I'm just doing it for them. I'm supporting them. I'm supporting their bodies in completing the trauma cycle, so that they don't have to do it all on their own, because it can be really hard. It's not suppressed without any reason. It's a self-protection mechanism. Our bodies are doing us a favor by dissociating. It's just that these coping mechanisms at some point, they don't serve us anymore, and then we have to change that.
And I find that's why it's, after experiencing doing shadow work with someone like yourself, is you have such compassion for, I feel you have such compassion for me when you're working with me, that I almost begin to have compassion for myself. And I start to hold that space for myself, that, you know, it's okay. I wasn't even aware that this was a thing to do. And it's okay that nobody taught me, because they weren't aware. And so now, you know, the best thing, you know, I always found that, I think I started working with you when I came back from Los Angeles, and I just kept looking at why is everything happening like this, and what's the common denominator, and that was me, because you can't blame what's happening on anybody else except for yourself. And it's not a blame, it's just you just weren't aware of all these things that you're just trying to do your best, and it's just an obstacle. So if you just, for me, I just finally, so many things happened in my life, I just stopped, and I was like, okay. One of my friends, I would call and ask him, I'm like, hey, can you do some healing on me? And finally he's, Heidi, you have to do this yourself. Nobody else can do this for you. And then he sent me a video of Teal Swan. And he's like, research this. And that's how I got started down that road. And at first I was almost offended that he didn't want to help me. You know, that, like, it was almost like he was just kind of, enough of your trauma. But really, he did me the best favor, because you are the best person to heal yourself, and to ask for people as yourself to help work with you and show you the way, and different tools to use, and to guide you and hold space for you in ways that you weren't even aware that you could hold space for yourself. And I just think that, I mean, working with you just really changed my whole life. And I'm so happy just to have you on my new YouTube channel, because I just want everyone to have opportunity like I had. And I know when I tell people about you, they, you know, well, can I work with her too? Is she in Germany? Can I work with her? And
There's something called internet.
Yes, exactly. And so, I
think, if I may interrupt you, I think the key, you said it so nicely, is self-compassion. And that's what people are lacking. Yes, we are what's the common denominator, but we didn't do anything wrong. It's not us doing something wrong. We were just hurt and we didn't know. And the moment we understand why we act the way we act, and we start to develop self-compassion, then we start to heal.
And it's, I find myself, I remember a couple years ago, I was with one of my ex-boyfriends, and we were shopping in this little town, and he took me on this beautiful date, and I could just feel myself being frustrated. I just couldn't stop being frustrated. And this sweet guy is doing everything he can to have this magical romantic day, and I'm just like, and so finally you know, I became aware. It was like in the middle of it, I'm like, oh, this is me. And I asked him, I go, could I have 5 minutes? I'm gonna go sit on that chair, like we're like in a shoe store. I'm like, I'm just gonna go sit there for a minute, and I think I need to be with myself just for 5 minutes. And he's like, okay, didn't even care. He just like, and so I went over and I sat with myself, and I closed my eyes. I remember I sat there and I was like, these people probably think that I'm crazy. I'm just sitting in the middle of a store and I'm just closing my eyes. And I was just like, I am completely here with you right now. Like, you obviously want my attention, and I'm stopping what I'm doing, and I'm completely here with you right now. And I just sat there, and I felt like I think I cried for a second. And I just, like, it was just so much emotions were happening inside me that just came out of nowhere. And then finally I was like, and I just kind of like sat with my emotions. And then I got up, and we had the most magical day, and the whole energy shifted. And he's like, wow, I'm so happy that you feel better. I didn't even say anything. He could just see it. And then it was just, and I learned that, and that was because I had learned to be with myself how you taught me. And so, and I just think that if more people could take 5 minutes and sit down during the day when all these things are happening, and maybe they don't have to watch the news all day long, they can sit and be with themselves, or they can go sit outside, or you know, do something that brings you back joy and kind of gets you out of everything that's happening, because you're like a radio tower, and you're sending out your signal. And I didn't want to be sending out a signal of, you know, being frustrated and whatnot. I mean, that's just an example for one day, but it just, one little intention kind of changed my whole day, and it probably changed the day of a lot of people I came into contact with. And so I just thought that was one of the many things that I learned.
That's a beautiful story. And isn't it amazing how fast it actually can be? Like, we resist feeling our emotions for days and hours and weeks, and like, man, and it becomes heavier and heavier, and we suffer really from it. And actually it just takes a few minutes to move within and to move through them, and then it's done.
Yes.
And then it's done for good. It won't come back.
Yes.
It's done.
Yeah.
There might be different layers, but it's really resolved then.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, I just think that, I know there's so many humans that are just suffering, and people, myself included, I make bad choices sometimes because I'm suffering from a situation or emotion, or I know the situation that you say it's like more of the story, and then you kind of bring it back to what the emotion is. And could you talk about that for a second? When people, when you're kind of, instead of focusing really on the story of everything that happened, it's not important, but what's more important is what the story is telling you about the emotion.
Right. Well, what's happening quite often when people feel pain, they start to analyze, they think, oh my gosh, like, why am I feeling so bad? And they start indulging in the story, and that increases the negative emotion. And then you have that cycle, negative emotion, negative thoughts, negative emotion, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. But if we were actually just to tune in into our bodies and into our feelings, and just drop the story and just focus on what we are actually feeling, then only then we are capable of actually dropping into the core and releasing it. So the story is spinning, but it's actually keeping us from really moving into the emotion. It's on one hand, it's perpetuating the pain, and on the other hand, it's hindering us from fully going into it so that we can resolve it. So it's really like it's locking the negative emotion, and then we are stuck, and we are thinking, feeling in a negative cycle. So drop the story, drop into your body, feel, and then you move through it just the way you described it with your example.
That's beautiful.
And another message that wants to come through here is, when I told you about the ancestral trauma, right? That the trauma of our ancestors can be stored in our system. So sometimes we feel really, really intense emotions, and we have no idea why. And it is because an old trauma that we carry in our system, but that wasn't our experience, is activated. And what can happen then is that our mind tries to explain us why we are feeling such strong emotions. It doesn't know that it's older than we are. So then sometimes we unconsciously make up things that are out of proportion. So it's actually far healthier to drop into the body and to resolve the pain where it actually sits, without giving the story too much power. And I'm not telling the story is not important, but sometimes our mind cannot fully judge what's going on there, because the emotional response can be so intense when our ancestors went to war or have been abused or whatever. And that can be triggered through something seemingly much minor, but it still gives a very strong emotional response. So that's why it's just far more effective to drop into the body and into the emotion to resolve it, rather than trying to resolve it on a mental level, because the pain is not stored on a mental level, it's stored here.
think that's beautiful. And that's so very true because, you know, I've almost experienced sometimes I'm like, why do I feel this so intensely? Something happened, but it wasn't that intense. And then I, you know, I'll try to figure it out, and I'll do what you say. You try to mentally figure it out, and then I just kind of give up, and I just kind of go and sit with it because it's almost like I'm exhausted from trying to figure it out.
Right.
And I have a question about, do you correlate dreams with what emotions that you're feeling during the day?
Yes. Dreams can be a way how our subconscious mind processes emotions. So we can actually process emotions there, but they can also be a messenger of unresolved stress. And that's when you wake up and you feel that lingering, like stress, like uncomfortable sensation. And then you can either just use the dream and work with the dream, or you can go into the emotion and see, where else do I actually feel like that? Where in my life do I feel that powerless or that sad or whatever it is? And then you see what your dreams are trying to tell you. And there are also techniques that help you to really translate the language of your dreams, where you can dive into every aspect of the dream and feel into that perspective, what it tells you about your life. So there are techniques how you can use them to unlock the message of the dream.
Do you have any techniques off the top of your head or books that you would recommend?
There is actually, for example, a Teal Swan video. I think it's not her modality or process herself, but she summarized it really well, how to understand your dreams. And that's what I just said. You feel into every aspect of the dream. Let's say you dream about a crocodile and a tree and whatever. So then you become the crocodile and you see what's the perspective of the crocodile, what's the message and the emotions of the crocodile. You do the same with the tree, with yourself, with any aspect of the dream. So basically you are everything that occurs in the dream, and then you dive into that perspective
and the different elements, right? They kind of give you different what's happening. Because I had an ex-boyfriend that died in March, and he was just 34 years old, and his heart just stopped. And for me, for 3 months, I just dreamed I was in water every night. I couldn't get out of the water. I was just, and I knew that because I was taking. Do you know who David Wilcock is? He has I've been taking his class, and he kind of goes over the dreams, and he says that if you're in the water, it has something to do with sadness, which completely made sense. But it was very interesting for me because I never, you know, I try to wake up now and I write down my dream, right? Because if you go to the bathroom and you come back and try to write it down, you'll forget the details. And so I try to write it down, and then I'll come back and I'm like, oh, and then I'll try to go back, look at my notes, what it all means. But I don't feel like I have enough details. I feel like I need to read some books about the universal dream language or something to figure out more. But you know, I like how you say that. More importantly is what's the feeling that's lingering, and go into that. I love that, because sometimes I find it kind of stressful to decipher my dream, and then I lose whatever feeling that was because I'm trying to think of the details too much.
Yeah, I personally don't believe in universal symbols that much. I really think we have our own language. Everyone has their own language in the dreams, their own symbolism. So just diving into your own reality then makes sense. And that's a lot about the emotions. I really believe the emotions are the key to understanding ourselves.
Right, for sure. And is there anything else that you would like to leave, a tool? I mean, you've given us so many, and I appreciate them, and I know everyone watching this is going to. And is there any other tools or anything that you feel during this time would be helpful for people?
Yeah, one thing I want to say is that our own healing, our emotional healing, our becoming more whole is very, very important. But I think it's also important that we are also connected with our vision, that we connect with what we came here for, who we want to be, so that we don't only focus on what's seemingly broken and what's wrong, but at what we want to create here, because we are really in this gigantic shift to create new earth here. And If we only focus on healing, we will never be done because of our own wounds, our ancestral wounds, the collective wounds. If we only focus on what's broken, we'll be busy for that until the day we die. But if we focus on our vision, on what we want to create, how we want our own lives to look like, how we want life on earth to look like, if we focus on that and move towards that with passion, and then just resolve what's on the way there, the obstacles on the way there, then life gets more into the flow. It's more sparkly, more inspired, and that's the way for me, that we combine it. And yes, there are phases when it's very important to focus on our healing, and I very much encourage that. I love that work, but I'm also really now also teaching people how to connect with their passion, with their greatest vision, and to move towards that. So I think it's very important to have a healthy balance there, and not to forget about our vision and what we want to experience.
I absolutely love that you say that, and I call it imagineering. Imagineer your future, and how does it look? How does it feel? What is that? What is that version of Heidi dressed like? Who does she hang out with? Where's she eating? Like, what's she doing? And then I have I call it my imagineering wall, and I just put pictures of everything, even though a lot of people think that the things I want to do might be like so ridiculous and grand. I love playing and putting it up there. And what if it happened? What if I'm creating this, and anything I can imagine I manifest, you know?
I love that. Exactly. That's what I do as well. Dream big, and then life opens doors. If you never dream big, if you don't allow yourself to dream, or to even wish for something small, life will only follow what you own. You gotta own your desires, and then we are creating our reality, and it can be crazy big.
Right. And there's a reason that you feel excited to have that dream. And
Exactly.
there's a reason that you're dreaming that, and maybe not other people in your family are dreaming that, because that's your calling.
Right.
And you know, if sometimes if you're hanging out with people who keep smushing down your dreams, maybe find other people who have big dreams, and you can go imagineer maybe for 20 minutes a day, and then maybe it becomes 40 minutes a day you hang out with them, or just that's a get out of the hole, like you say, and just start making new sandcastles.
And the interesting thing is that both the healing and the dreaming, it's both integration. Mm-hmm. It's just with the one you're integrating the past, and with the other you're integrating the future. But right. There you're free, there you can choose. And that's how you discover who you are, by dreaming about how Heidi can dress like, how she will be like. That's how we find out who we are, by experimenting, by playing with it and seeing if we like it or not, and how to make it even better. And that's where the fun starts. And you can do both at once, the integrating of the past and the future, like integrating the split aspect of the past and integrating the joyful and exciting aspects of the future. And that's how you move forward really quickly, and with a strong flow and passion and joy. And yeah.
And do you have any tools that you would like to leave with people for imagineering their future?
I'm actually working myself with a daily practice for that, and I'm teaching that to people, but that's a bit more complex. But I'm myself connecting with my greatest vision every day, like twice a day. I'm taking time to really connect with my highest truth, with my divine self, and I allow it to guide me to my greatest vision. But I think what you're doing, a vision board, is a great tool for that. But then also what you already mentioned, feeling. How does it feel like to be already there? Mm-hmm. So that's basically the most effective way to feel it, not just to look at pretty pictures, but really like, when I'm already there, when I'm already embodying this, what decisions am I taking from there? So you're embodying it already, and then you're creating your life from there, and not from the broken past.
I heard Dr. Joe Dispenza once say, imagine it as if it already happened in the past.
Exactly.
how does it feel? You know, you're almost, you're celebrating. How does it feel now? You know, you already accomplished this. How does that feel? And not someone who wants to accomplish it, but someone who actually did accomplish it.
Yes, you fully embody it, you become it, and then you move on from there, right?
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I think that's it. How can people find you if they would like to work with you on maybe their trauma or about creating their future, which I think they go hand in hand together because
they do, and I do both. My website is www.liberateyourself.de. That's the easiest way to find me.
okay, perfect. Well, I just thank you so much, and it's just been such a pleasure to see you and talk with you. And you know, I hope maybe I can start working with you more about imagineering on an even bigger level. So
it would be lovely, and thank you so much for having me on. It was lovely to talk to you again.
well, thank you so much, and I wish you the best, and thank you for all that you do for everybody.
Thank you. I think this platform that you're creating here now is wonderful. I'm so happy that you're starting this project, and yeah, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So thank you for giving me that space.
Well, thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon. And thank you guys for joining Wake Up, Wake Up. And I hope you really think about everything that Jana has said here. And you know, the best that we can do is to go and research ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it? What is it that makes us happy? Where does our excitement come from? What do I want to do? What would I do if money didn't matter? What would I do? And if you don't know, the universe doesn't know to give it to you. So you need to figure it out in one way or another, you know? But play is the best way, I think.
Yes.
So, okay. Thank you so much, Anna. And I'll see everybody next week.